Welcome to the Speak and Get What You Want podcast, where you learn to communicate like the world's most successful leaders. Now, here are your hosts, TK Stratton and Chad Kirby.
The key to a successful life, a successful career, is understanding that you are on a journey, and it's not always the destination that's key, but the journey that gets you there. And we're going to unpack that further with the great Brett Gilliland. He is a brilliant mind that heads up elite entrepreneurs and has had impact on so many people. But before we get into that, we're going to learn a little bit about Brett's journey and how he got to where he is today. Brett, great to be with you.
Oh, it's so fun to be with you here, Chad, and looking forward to our conversation.
You know, Brett, it's interesting because you have a massive impact on entrepreneurs. There are thousands and thousands of people that have really listened to you and have benefited from you. But how did you get to where you are today? I mean, you obviously graduate from college, you start on a journey, but where did your journey really start?
Yeah, I don't usually get asked questions like this, Chad. You're going to put it to me here. Here's what I would say. My journey started in recognizing, looking around. I'm pretty observant. I see things and recognizing that not all organizations are built to be effective ones. I was part of some companies, some well-known brands that you and others would recognize, and was like, we don't really have our act together completely. Like this isn't very good. And then the other thing that I noticed in those situations is that when you want to go from the place you are to somewhere new, there's a lot of work involved to kind of turn a big ship. And I wanted to help smaller businesses be great from the start. I didn't want to fix a bunch of broken big businesses or even a few really big broken businesses. I wanted to help smaller businesses build a great company from the start. So I didn't get into a lot of the detail. We can go into as much as or as little as you'd like, but the punchline is I saw what it looks like in big companies when things go bad. I spent a lot of time restructuring businesses, letting people go, doing things that just weren't very fun. And I decided I was built to go help businesses grow. I was built to help smaller businesses build something great. And so I got into that, and I've been spending my time ever since helping specifically 7-figure businesses, the 1 to 10 million range, figure out how to go from that scrappy, gritty founder to capable business building leader. Like there's a transition there that often happens in that 7-figure space. And that's where I've chosen to dedicate all my time. And it's super fun.
Well, and it's benefited so many. Now, Brett, you mentioned there that you like going into businesses before the cement's completely dry, right? You like help building
Right.
that foundation. And what's interesting, and I've listened to you speak countless times and always appreciate your insights. And so when you are going into a new business, what is the first thing you really look for to help them build that solid foundation?
Yeah. It's less about what I'm looking for. It's more about what I'm helping them to get clear about.
Mm,
So I'm actually looking for levels of clarity. I want to leave there with them having full clarity, and not just the business owner, but their key people and ideally their whole team with full clarity about why does this business exist in the first place? What is the purpose of this business? I want them to have full clarity about what it means to have shared identity in this business. You hear people talk about values and core values. That really is about what makes us belong here. How do we share some identity with one another? So I want them clear on the purpose. I want them clear on their values. And lastly, I want them super clear about where are we going together now? Not some hypothetical big open-ended mission statement that never gets completed, but a very specific destination oriented objective. When we achieve it, we'll know it, we'll check that off, and then we'll go to the next place together. So I want them clear on the purpose, the values, and the mission. To me, that lays a really solid foundation for whatever they want to build together.
and you know what's interesting, Brett? You mentioned that you start off there with that word clarity. It's amazing whether you're the business owner yourself or you're a leader, whatever responsibilities you have. I'm amazed, Brett, at how many people do in fact lack clarity of where they're going or where they're headed. In fact, so many businesses, and you saw that, you've seen this firsthand, they're functioning and they're doing a decent job, but they really have no clarity in their destination. What
Yeah, what they've done, Chad, to kind of beat you to the point there on your question, what they've done is that they've created their own sticking point, right? They've learned how to get and serve clients. They grow their thing to a certain level. It's like we've got this steady operation. We know how to get clients, we know how to serve clients. And then they sort of tap out and they're done thinking about the future. They're so consumed with what they've already built that they don't look up and out. They're all their time and attention is looking down and in on what they've built, and they're working it, right? They're doing the best they can. They're pedaling hard. I use a bicycle analogy sometimes. They're like stuck in a gear and they're pedaling and pedaling and pedaling. And all they have to do, if they could just learn how to shift gears, the work would be less and the yield would be greater, but they're just hustling in the thing that they've built.
and they just get caught up in that trap. And how is it, how do you get out of that trap? So somebody who they're saying, Brett, I hear what you say, and it's true, because I get caught up in that, and I love that bicycle analogy where I'm just pedaling, 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 but I never shift gears, so I feel like I'm just pedaling faster and I'm not getting anywhere any quicker. And so what is it that they have to do? What's the first thing they have to do to start to begin to gain some of that clarity? Because again, Brett, so many people, whether in their business or in life in general, they really lack that.
Yeah, you mentioned the journey. You even asked me about my journey. I didn't mention at all. My graduate studies was in something called organizational behavior, which is just a really technical term for the study of organizations, how they tick, what makes the great ones great, what makes the poor ones poor. Anyway, so I'm an organizational behavior geek, and I'll save everybody listening 2 years of graduate school. Okay, this is the major takeaway of graduate school for me. All organizations are perfectly designed to get the results they get. Now that may sound like a master of the obvious moment, right? But what you have built, I can congratulate every single business owner that I meet and say, congratulations on building the perfect business to get the results you're getting today. Because that's what we've all done. We've built the thing that gets us what we get, right? It's a master of the obvious moment. But if we want to do something new, it's the first step. Acknowledging that what we have is the result of what we've built, it's the result of the actions we're taking, is the first step to saying, if I want something different, I actually have to do something different. And again, that's obvious, but we all get stuck in just people are patterns of behavior, right?
Right.
Um, there's a lot of human tendencies. One is we drift, we forget, we wander. Like there's a lot of like having to pull us back to true north to recenter, get refocused again. That's
Sure.
one thing that happens with all of us. We get distracted. Another thing that happens with all of us is that we get very comfortable in the behavior patterns that we've established. The thing that's been working for us, we keep doing that. And if we want to create something new, we have to change, and that's so hard for us as human beings. So the first thing that I would say, Chad, to back to your question, the first thing we have to do is recognize that the behavior, the actions we've been taking, will not get us where we say we want to go. They will not. We have to change what we're doing, and that looks like a difference in how we spend our time. So we have to look at our calendar and say, I've been spending my time in a certain way. Just like in a financial context, we have to look at where we've been spending every single penny. If we want to change our financial outcomes, we got to change how we allocate financial resources. If we want to change what's happening in our life, we have to change what's going on with the allocation of our time. We have to spend it differently. And that is hard for a lot of us.
Oh, no, no question. And I love that you use that analogy, because in a previous life, you and I had the opportunity to meet and work with Dave Ramsey. And Dave, one of his things is he always talks about telling your money where it's going rather than the money just evaporating, right? You're going to
Mm.
dictate where it's going. And the same can be said in your analogy here is time dictating and determining where you're spending your time.
That's
And
right.
and we talk about that, the difference between operating opportunistically and strategically, right? Being very determined that this is where I'm going to go. And so understanding and recognizing where you are now is you are right now because of decisions you've made previously. And
Mhm.
so because of that, you either perhaps like your situation or you want to see that situation change. So when you come into an organization and you're talking to people and you're saying, listen, you really need to gain greater clarity, they have to, I mean, that's a lot of inward, they got to look inward on there because Brett, that's kind of tough. You're dealing with people's businesses, which you deal specifically with. That's like their child, and you're telling them that they need greater clarity in raising their child or leading their business.
Yeah, and I think human development, actually developing, or parenting a child is a fantastic parallel with what it means to move your business through development stages. There are actually stages, much like there's an infant and then a toddler and then like a preschooler and then a I don't know, elementary school and a preteen and a teen and adult. Like there are stages of human development and there are stages of business development. And if we don't help that business or that child move through those stages, they can kind of maybe the years will still pass, right? But maybe
Right.
you kind of get stuck behaviorally in a previous stage and you don't progress. I know I have some kids that I'm like, we need to move back to some earlier stages and get you developing the way that like you might have missed a lesson or two there. And the same thing happens in our business. So we have to get clear about the work of each stage to shift gears. We talked about shifting gears, the work of each stage, and then we have to allocate those precious time and money resources to that work of that stage, or else we'll just continue to be in the creation that we already have.
Right. And you'll just be repeating things over and over again, doing the same
Yeah,
things, getting the same results, and wondering why things haven't changed.
that's right.
And so then Brett, once you go into an organization, how do you get them, inspire them to want to make these changes without them beating themselves up for the mistakes that they have made, right? Because you're just pointing out things to them like, hey, here's some things that you need to be doing. For example, the clarity, you need to have clarity. And of course, they're thinking, oh, of course I need clarity. Of course we should be clear on our destination. So how do you inspire people to take that right action without them beating themselves up in the process?
Yeah, I think because we've used the term development so far, let's
Mm.
bring it back to human development. Any parent knows, any person knows, life's about learning from trial and error, learning from mistakes. It's I mean, we call them mistakes. It's just experience, right? So we're just experiencing. There's no shame in what's happened to this point. In fact, I honor what they've built to get here.
Mm.
95% of businesses that start never make it to a million in revenue. So when
Wow.
I'm working with somebody in that seven-figure range, the reason my business is called Elite Entrepreneurs is because I'm acknowledging that they are elite entrepreneurs. One out of about 20 get there, five out of about 100, right? That
Oh,
makes them elite.
right.
So we start there and say, "Well, there's no shame in what's happened. It allowed you to get to where you are. But if you want to go somewhere new, let's just focus on moving forward. Let's not beat up the past." So I honor them, and then we take the valuable lessons they've learned and we add some goodness to it and we move forward.
Well, and with that being said, you've worked with some really gifted, phenomenal leaders, and forgetting not forgetting the past, but being able to move on and continue to move forward, even though we've all made mistakes. But as you've worked with these great leaders, Brett, what are some of the characteristics that they all have in common, or perhaps maybe work on so that they can lead their companies to where they need to be?
Fantastic question. And I would turn that question on everybody listening right now, everybody engaged in this conversation. You think about the best leaders you've ever worked with, the best leaders you've ever known. What common traits, what common characteristics, what common patterns in how they invested their time, right? What did you hear and see from them that would indicate some sort of thing that you want to pick up and acquire in your own life? And I would say that most of the leaders we all respect are people who have figured out how to master themselves. At least they're working on that, right? There's a little bit of I have to lead myself well before I can lead others. If you come across somebody who can't take care of themselves, you're not very likely to follow them. You're less likely to follow them. They can be charismatic. They can have a successful meaning a large business doing lots of revenue. Maybe they have the financial things that you would like to have or that they would like to have. But if you don't really respect the person that they are, you're not really likely to follow them. So the people that I work with that are the most successful, they've figured out how to take care of themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally. They have solid social and personal family relationships. But they've figured out what it looks like to be well, to be whole, and then they're in a good place to be able to lead others. So probably not where you're going with that, but I've
No,
noticed.
that's exactly where I was going. That's phenomenal, Brett, that you bring up that insight, because if they have the ability to lead themselves, then that directly translates into leading others.
Right, and that all the way back to how do they manage their selves in the use of their time.
Mm,
You can tell what matters to somebody by how they spend their time and their money and who they hang out with, right? You already mentioned Dave Ramsey. We'll bring in another Ramsey ism. He talks about running with thoroughbreds, right? Not
right,
donkeys. Like
right.
we don't want to hang out with donkeys. We want to hang out with thoroughbreds. Well, that's another clue. The most successful, the most developed people on the planet, they spend their money well, they spend their time well, they hang out with people who are going to help them get where they want to get. And anyway, that's the type of thing that we look for in somebody who's doing it right. And no amount of saying inspirational words or cracking a whip to your team is going to compensate or overcome a lack of respect that they have for you as a person if you don't live your life in a way that they're like, I kind of like Chad. I kind of want to, I want to be around Chad. I want to listen to what he's saying.
Right. Absolutely. And along those same lines, Brett, I'd shared in an earlier podcast episode that they did a survey of the top 700 CEOs in America, and they looked for the one characteristic that they all had in common. And it was interesting that you brought up what you just said, because the one characteristic that at least this article indicated was self-awareness, that the greatest leaders had a high level of self awareness. And what you just said is the same thing in a different way, that they have the ability to lead themselves. They knew where they were deficient and they worked on that specific area. They were self aware and then led themselves first so that they could then inspire others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I mean, I'll agree with that article. I don't, I don't know where it is, but I'll agree with it. Um, Another thing, and Chad, you ran the risk when you asked me to be on this show that I could take it any number of directions. One direction I'd like to take it for a second is that when we get clear, we talked about clarity.
Right.
We have a mutual friend named Clayton Mask, and I was privileged to work with Clayton for many years. And one of the things that Clayton would say is the two most powerful words for any entrepreneur, any leader is I'm clear.
Mm,
Okay. So part of that self-awareness is who am I? What am I about? And am I progressing? Am I actively creating myself towards
mm,
that? And Clay worked with a coach for many years. I was privileged to do some work with that coach, and where we started was getting clear about who we are. Who am I? And
Right.
so there are 14 I am statements that I've created that reflect who I am creating. And for the past many, many years now, I say those 14 I am statements to myself every single day, which sounds a little bit like affirmations. There's some crossover in the idea of
Sure.
affirmations, but this is
Sure.
different. This is actively creating who I am. It's not saying what I hope someday or what I want to manifest in my life. These are core statements of who I am. And that helps me stay grounded. And another direction I'll go this really quickly is that if you want to have happy team members, you need to understand what makes happy people. And happy people, there's lots of things that go into it, but let me share three keys to happy employees. They want to be connected to something meaningful work. I call that purpose, right? We've talked about that. They want to be around other people that they get along with. They want to be connected to others. You can call that belonging. But we'll shorten that to people, right? So purpose and then people, and then the third thing is they want to be growing. They want to be developing or progressing. So happy employees, if you help them with purpose, with people that they feel belonging with, and with progression, a feeling of movement that I'm actually becoming more tomorrow than I was today, that makes for a happy person. And if you manage yourself, or back to leading yourself, if you can
Right.
lead yourself around those things, you can help other people do the same.
I love that. That is so powerful. And I just want to emphasize a couple points you just made there, Brett. One, knowing who you are. Like leaders that know who they are confident and they don't become intimidated by other people in the sense that they try to pretend to be something they're not. You know,
Mhm.
you and I have both been blessed with a bunch of children. And one of the things that my greatest wish and desire for my children is that they know who they really are. And for me, I'm a very religious, God-fearing man, and I want my children to know, look, you are a child of God. I want you to know who you are, and you have the purpose on this earth. And I love that you point out those specific things because people there, a wise man once said that happiness is the object and design of our existence. And so we're here on this earth to experience happiness. And when you know who you are and you're wanting people to be happy, that's absolutely game changing in your ability to lead others.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
and it's
I
a selfless approach.
Yeah, and then, there's a lot of parallels between personal effectiveness and organizational effectiveness. I've studied what makes great organizations, but the same lessons apply to what makes great effective people, right?
Mm,
And that clarity is true in both cases. So that's why we start with purpose in our own selves as leaders, and we start with purpose in the organization, in the business. We got to be clear about what is that North Star, that guiding idea that drives everything that we do. And when we have that clarity, now we can start to align people to that. We can align resources to that. We can get clear about the specific destination that we're up to, which we talked about earlier. But it all starts with who are we? Why are we doing this? And how do we want to show up with each other? And where do we want to go together? And once you get all that clarity, then it's just specific goals or targets that we're going to go. It's not just like naming goals and we go magically hit those goals. It's more like a destination. What are we going to create
mm.
together? Yes, we're going to get and serve clients, but on that'll be part of the journey to a place that we're intentionally creating. And that's way more fulfilling than just, collect the mighty dollar in exchange for another service.
Absolutely. And I love how you interchange the word clarity and destination because they really are, when you have clarity of who you are, you know where you're going and you're clear in your destination. And I
Mhm.
love that that reminder. It's so critical for all of us. And by the way, everything, Brett, that you're talking about, and those listening, whether you own a business, you have a family, whatever you do, they are all in the same. You and I have a someone that we really mutually respect, Patrick Lencioni, And Patrick's written several books, and I was speaking at an event with Patrick, and he got up and he shared this story, Brett. He was talking about, and Patrick really focuses on effective organizations as well. And Patrick, he said, he turned to his wife and said, if we ran our business the way we run our home, we'd be bankrupt.
Right.
And and then he said he had to duck because something came flying in the other direction, right? But the point that Patrick was making was that sometimes we get real clear on a business, but then we don't get very clear in our family. Sometimes we get clear in our family, we don't get clear personally. And so what you're talking about, the importance of clarity and the importance of destination, is not just with your business, it's not just with what you do, it's in every area of your life. You can maximize your impact with others when you have clarity as to who you are. And Brett, you mentioned earlier, you just mentioned that you have those I am statements that remind you of who you are. And I have 25 statements that I read as well, to remind me of who I am and what I want to accomplish as well, and what I want to become, right? And when we become that person that has a clear destination, then you can maximize your impact with other people.
Yeah, I think you referenced earlier staying like on course when other people are trying to pull you off or something. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I just I just know that part of the human condition is distractedness, right? Like we just get distracted. And it's not even like that you have naysayers or enemies or anything. It's just life also pulls us in a lot of directions. And the most effective people, the most successful leaders are people who have that clarity we talked about, and then they have a way to bring people back to that over and over again.
Mm.
And I because I don't have the ability to keep myself on target without specific structures and routines in my personal life, and a business has to do the same if they don't want to get distracted and pulled lots of directions. So it's important in our leadership to have rhythms that help us, yes, get and serve clients today, but at the same time, we need rhythms around the focus of what we're building towards for the future, that higher cause or that purpose and that destination we talked about. So every business has to manage. There's a little bit of a juggling act or balancing act around working in the business or working on the business. We've all heard that language,
We have.
but the clarity of vision, the purpose, the values, the mission we talked about, and the structure, the discipline around meeting rhythm allows us to do both of those things. Have enough energy, focus, time, resources, attention going towards the day to day, getting and serving the clients, and enough of those precious resources going towards the building of the future. And that's the magic, right? It's like, but I'm so busy doing that all the day. I know you are. If you
Mm.
want to change that, you have to get clear and you have to get enough discipline and enough rhythm to keep yourself realigned to that stated future.
I love that. I love that. Brett, the insights you share are powerful, and they're life-changing as well as game-changing in your business. Brett, thanks for being with us. Thank you for your insights. We'll have to do this again. I could talk to you for hours. Appreciate everything you've shared, Brett.
Oh, it was so fun for me. And anytime you want to talk, I'm all
All
yours.
right. Have a tremendous day, everyone. Bye now.